Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to my talk. If you have any trouble hearing me, just wave frantically, and we'll resolve that. So today I'm talking about my experience building local geo-communities. And I'm really excited to talk to you about this today because we're at one of the greatest open source geospatial conferences that you can be at. And community is a really important element of that. So a little bit about myself. I've worked in the geospatial community for about 5 years, and I really have a passion for organizing events, bringing people together. I was just thinking back to kind of my origin story, and when I was in high school, I had a kind of fun thing with my friends where we'd organize punk rock shows. So I kind of think that the geospatial side of things is like the punk rock of tech. So I feel like I've always kind of had this in my blood, and I'm really excited to kind of share some of the experiences with you today. Okay, cool, sorry. So the structure of my talk, essentially I'm going to be talking about some general kind of tips and concepts in community building. I'm going to talk about some experiences where we've been able to learn from others doing really interesting and innovative things. And I'm going to give some tips on how to get started if you're interested in kind of building a community up in a new city or contributing to one that already exists. So I'll start out with a disclaimer. These are just my experiences, mostly in Philadelphia. So if you're in a different city with a different kind of collaborative structure, you might have different experiences. You might have different reactions when you try to organize and bring folks together. So I would just say, your mileage might vary. You might have different experiences than I do. But I hope there's some kind of elements that you can take from this talk and find them useful. So kind of general concepts in building community. Actually, if you were here for Patrick's talk just before this, I actually thought that was a really great kind of counterpoint because his talk was all about how to build community around developer contributions in an open source product and how to do that all from a remote aspect, how to do it on Twitter and GitHub. So this is a little bit different. This is about how you build community one-on-one, how you bring people together and ideas together for kind of in-person communication. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of volunteers. I think it's pretty common that most communities are built by a really strong group of volunteers, and that's kind of the backbone of a lot of these communities. But it's important to, I'll get to this a little bit later, but it's important to remember this, but also it's important to kind of diversify if you can. If there's a way to include not just volunteers in your organization, that's a really nice way to keep the momentum going and making sure no one gets burnt out. So I think collaboration is one of the most important things, and I'll get more specific about this later, but I think some of the strongest communities I've seen collaborate with either other groups, across industries, across event types. So this is a really great way to build something that's very resilient. And of course, as volunteers, we want to remember that time is a finite resource. None of us have unlimited budgets of time that we can just constantly spend on message boards, Twittering, organizing events, bringing people together. So it's important to be cognizant of this, and I think I've seen this in not necessarily the geospatial field, but in other fields, this trend to kind of overcommit, get burnt out, and then be like, I never want to be involved in the community again. So the whole kind of idea around this is we want to avoid that because you hate to lose someone that is really excited about contributing to the community. So what else? What are the other kind of general concepts around building community? So a few of the things, I don't think all of these are absolutely required, but a few of the things that make for stronger communities, a champion or sponsor. This can be a local university that volunteers its space every month. It can be an organization or company that volunteers some staff time or contributes pizza money once a month. So kind of having a structured, a formal organization that can support you is really, really awesome. Next is, I personally feel that having a regional group of successful community groups is a great way to have a more vibrant community in general. So I think, the more geo-focused groups in one area, the better. I think that it's worth being thoughtful about how those groups work together so you're not duplicating efforts. But it's definitely a great way to kind of distribute the effort that's required in building a big community. And steady venue arrangements. So this is both having a consistent place to meet, but it's also about the consistency of your events. It's much easier to be able to remember to attend an event if you know it's on the same day of the month each month, or it's at the same place. And it's also nice to kind of mix it up sometimes, but having that steady venue arrangement lets you not have to worry about that aspect of organizing. A few things that are important to take advantage of. A platform. I'm a fan of meetup.com. I know some folks aren't fans of meetup.com. There is a fee involved in using it, but I haven't seen another comparable platform that gives you the same type of email communication with your members without all the overhead that would take if you were doing it manually. So Meetup is also great because it actually recommends members to other groups that have similar interests. So I think it will help you organically build a community around folks that are interested without doing that much work. And the cost to run on meetup.com is about $180 a year, so it's certainly not cheap. But if you either have a sponsor to cover that, or if you solicit $2 to $5 from each of your members, you can cover it pretty easily. And a defined vision. I want to be clear that this doesn't necessarily have to be set at the beginning and never change. This can be something that evolves, but at any place you are in your community building, it's good to know kind of what your goals are, what your general selection of events that you like to plan, what type of folks that you're reaching out to, what groups you're missing in your community, how to reach out to them. So kind of defining that vision is a really great way to do that. And then a code of conduct. Code of conducts are really fantastic ways to make sure all of your members have safe and fun experiences. There's actually some really fantastic open source code of conducts that you can borrow from. MapTime's code of conduct and the Eclipse Foundation's code of conduct are both great for inspiration. So I'll give some kind of examples of some specific stories and specific kind of efforts that I've seen that have been really successful, because I think it's definitely worth capitalizing on those. So cross-group collaboration. I want to say that this is both the way that similar geogroups collaborate and also the way that geogroups collaborate with other groups. And those other groups can be tech groups, so they can be specific coding languages. They can be themes like big data or data science. They can be kind of more tertiary groups like a math or science meetup group. And they can be totally unrelated, like an outdoors or hiking meetup group. The cool thing about maps and geo is that honestly, everybody loves maps. I mean, I think that's just a given. But so it's not terribly difficult to find an opportunity to collaborate on a mashup between a meetup group that might seem unrelated, because just introducing maps to that group is going to be valuable to them. So a few ways that you can do this cross-group collaboration are co-hosting events, which is really fantastic because if you task your co-organizing group with, for example, finding the venue, and you're tasked with finding the speakers, and then you both do outreach, you theoretically cut the organization tasks in half. In reality, I don't think it works like that. I think that oftentimes there's definitely a cost to collaborating because there's more decisions to discuss and more communication. But I've also seen some really successful collaborations that are pretty low effort and resulted in really robust events. It's also a great way to expand the number in your group, because if you've got 50 data science nerds RSVPing with 50 geo nerds, Now all those folks are also members of your meetup group, and they're going to get information on future events. Also having speakers that can speak at the intersection of two events. We had a math meetup that we coordinated with, and they had some speakers talk about algorithms and projections and all kinds of things that were more mathy. And it was a great way to bring in a whole bunch of folks that would not have found us otherwise. And it gives you a way to broaden the scope, which is actually, for most cases, pretty helpful. And it gives you the opportunity to get creative. If you just kind of browse the popular groups and events that are happening in your city, there might be already some natural collaborations available. So another thing that I'll recommend, and I've seen a lot of success with, is a local presence for a national event. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with GIS Day, which is a national event, international, you could probably say. It's one day a year that's dedicated to GIS events. It is run by Esri, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to do your own GIS Day event and get really creative with it. If you want to do an open source event on GIS Day, that's cool. I mean, no one's going to get upset at you. A lot of universities already do GIS Day events, and a lot of even some local governments do those. So it's a great place to start. Also, Location Tech Tour has a series of regional events that have kind of a national presence. Philadelphia does a great event called Not at South by Southwest. So it essentially is bringing all the folks together that aren't at South by Southwest and talking about the cool stuff they're doing, which is a cool way to kind of capitalize on an event that most folks can't really afford to attend. Another idea is doing a talk submission planning event. So say, in 6 months, there's a conference that relates to, what you're interested in. Have a kind of brainstorming event that invites your members to think about pitches they want to make to talk sessions. Or similarly, after a conference happened, have the folks that attended that conference come and share some of the knowledge they learned with the folks in your city that weren't able to attend. So I also think that for open source folks and geo folks, it's really valuable to branch across industries. So I see groups and efforts that are really siloed into one industry, a university, a GIS club, or a government kind of working group. But I think there's this huge opportunity to make sure that both government and nonprofit and corporate folks are all being involved in your group. And a few cool ways to do that is to solicit their support with venues. A great way to invite and get government folks, for example, to come out is to have an event at a government office. Similarly with academia, have an event at their university library. A lot of those spaces are free to use, you just have to ask. And then definitely making sure that you have speakers from all those different spaces, because it's going to be difficult to recruit folks to attend your events from different industries if you don't actually represent those speakers there. And regional collaboration, I think, is really cool. I see this a lot in DC and in New York and Philadelphia, where events are held in one of those cities, but they make an effort to invite folks from nearby cities. And this can also be state to state. For example, New Jersey has a really nice, vibrant local government GIS community, and they've been pretty successful at reaching out to Philly, inviting those folks to come and participate in their events. And strategic planning. I think this is really, really, really valuable. This doesn't have to be anything too serious, but just inviting some of your members to attend an event perhaps once a year to get together and talk about the direction of your group is really, really valuable. Also, you can do this digitally. You can have a Google group of organizers, and you can also collaborate with other groups. If there's a map time group and you're more of like a general geosocial group, it's great to meet together, talk about ways you can intersect or co-coordinate, and kind of make those collaborations worthwhile. So there's a few different ways you can approach strategic planning. But I would say kind of an in-person kind of knowledge share or, kind of roundtable discussion is perhaps the most effective. It really helps also your members that are interested feel really engaged. And another nice thing about it is you develop some redundancy in the organization of your group. And actually, I think, I'll get to that in a second. Next is kind of what Patrick was talking about earlier, maintaining communication kind of consistently. So he was talking about making sure you're on your message board once a day, making sure that you're on your Twitter handle regularly, or you're responding to your GitHub pull requests regularly. So what that means for a meetup group or another kind of group that is more about personal contact, that might be using your message board successfully and sending out job postings or sending out announcements about events that would be interesting, even if they're not a perfect fit. Like if you run a geo group and there's an archival map event in your town, or if there's like an event relating to public health. There's a lot of overlap in the geosphere, so it's a really great opportunity to share those events with your group, even if you're not directly involved in organizing them. I think that really goes back to this kind of like collaboration is really a net positive, and hosting or co-marketing an event is really just a success for both of the events. Also, Slack channel. There's a great Slack channel called GeoDevs, also the spatial community. Is anyone here on that Slack channel? All right, a few folks, cool. It's a great way to kind of connect about something. You can start up a channel for your city or for your area of interest and kind of keep the conversation going. Also Twitter, GIS Tribe. Any GIS Tribe folks here? Yeah, cool. Same thing, just kind of having regular communication. It's a great way to kind of build a network of folks that all have same interests and same kind of commitment to the community. Resources from up high. I think these aren't always, I don't think there's a great example in the geo community, but I've seen it in other communities. For example, Girl Develop It is a national organization that provides low-cost tech and coding training for women in cities all across America and actually all across the world. And they have a lot of really fantastic resources that their local chapters can use. So that's a huge asset. When you're starting from scratch, you don't want to have to put together 10 workshops worth of materials. That would take days and days. So if you can go ahead and grab some material based on that folks have already developed and they're willing to share, it's a great way to kind of get yourself started pretty quickly. Similarly, Code for America has their local brigade chapters, and they offer support to them for fundraising and for other kind of aspects of organizing. So it's a great way to be able to meet regularly and have a good consistency in your groups without doing a ton of work ahead of time. I know MapTime HQ definitely has resources they provide to their members. They've got a Slack channel. They do workshop materials that they let anyone download. So it's a great way to get started. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's my main thing here. And there's a ton of free activities and tutorials and guides online. Go ahead, do some searching, find one that you think is interesting, run through it a few times, make sure you feel like you've mastered the experience or the material, and then you can go and take that and teach that to a new group of folks. So it's a great way to get started quickly. And then redundancy. So, as I said before, time is a finite resource. We are just humans. We only have so many hours a day that we can commit. It's important that you have a kind of a team of organizers that can duplicate each other's efforts. So, if you have some folks that do organizing and they know all your speaker contacts, make sure they share that with other members of the organizing committee. Or if you have relationships with venues, make sure you introduce those folks to other organizers. So if for some reason someone leaves, someone decides that they don't have enough time, or they have a family situation that doesn't let them volunteer as much time, you still have someone on your organizing committee that can do that type of organizing work. So redundancy is all about that. And I think it really builds stronger relationships and helps the longevity of a community group. Also, document everything. If you have some techniques in your head that work successfully in your city, make sure you write them down, because at some point, if you move on, you want the next person to be able to pick up on those and move forward. So a few tips on kind of getting started and getting your group up and running. So I wanted to kind of put forth a scenario in which, you've got a town or a city, and you're pretty much starting from scratch. There's no other group available that you could collaborate with. You're pretty much, going to be the first geo-type group happening in your town. So a few kind of tips that I wanted to present are, contact potential partners at local universities, industry leaders, or government. You never know. There might be a local university that already has a user group or an academic program related to geo that would be more than happy to coordinate or collaborate on events. Similarly, industry leaders, this might not exactly be geo folks. This could be some sort of e-commerce company in your town that actually has a big interest in geo. Or it could be some sort of data science group that works with a lot of spatial data. Or it could be a government that has a lot of spatial data that they would like to get the word out about, but they have never had the opportunity to do so. And then, of course, I think starting small is the best way to get started. You don't have to plan a 2-day conference for your first event. Don't do that. It would be very overwhelming. But start small. Start with a happy hour, a geo breakfast, something low effort to get folks to just come out and meet each other. And I think a lot of organic conversations come out of that experience that will give you ideas for future events. For example, 2 folks are talking about a project they're doing in 3D, and then maybe that's a perfect first event where you have those folks give presentations about what they're doing. So don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be a huge, elaborate, extravagant event. You can do something really relaxed. I think actually these low-key events like happy hours and geo breakfasts are actually a great way to get folks out in a pretty low intensity way. So even if you have a more established group, I'd still recommend kind of interspersing these kind of casual events just to kind of facilitate conversations. It's also a great way for folks to get involved that might feel a little bit timid, or they might feel like they might not have the technical skills to be involved in a more serious event like a conference, but they might feel totally equipped to come for a cup of coffee. Next, as I was saying before, cross-pollinating. So this is all about finding other groups in your town that are already established and coordinating with them for an event. And honestly, this can be creative, it can be kind of out there, or it can be more traditional, like two tech meetups, each bringing together 2 speakers and doing a short series of talks. But I think that's a great way to grow a group into a larger presence. It's very possible that those folks in, for example, a Postgres meetup would be really interested in learning about PostGIS or learning about spatial data, but they never had the opportunity to do so before. And I put together some ideas for kind of like low-effort, free events to get started. Potlucks are actually one of the best low-effort events you can do. You pretty much just need a space and encourage everyone to bring some food, chat, have fun. You don't even need a venue. You just need a park and some decent weather. A geocaching, some sort of outdoor orienteering type event. These are great for folks that are interested in outdoor stuff, especially if you live in a city with a nice climate. Like I said, geo beers, geo breakfast, and to cross-promote another event already being scheduled. So you never know. There might be some similar or related event in your town, and volunteer to help them promote it. And that gives you something to kind of tell folks to attend, and kind of keeps your group on the radar for them. And next is always to have a placeholder for a future event. So I think ideally, if you're currently at an event, you have a bunch of your members there, it's great to be able to tell them, a month from now we're having this event, or 2 months from now we're looking for a speaker, so would you be interested in speaking? It's a great way to kind of keep those folks on, keep your group on their radar, make sure that things don't get stagnant. It's okay if you go a few months without an event, but it's much more effective to have something regularly on the schedule, because then folks can rely on it. So that's kind of it for my slides. I actually wanted to invite kind of some open discussion about this. If anybody has an experience that was really successful or an experience that was very unsuccessful, I think it would be great to hear those. There's also a Birds of a Feather tomorrow at 7 o'clock for folks that are interested in organizing map time, geo events, EURISA events, Esri meetups, whatever your thing is. Feel free to stop by and kind of share. Similarly, if you're interested in sponsoring these type of events, you could come as well. And yeah, let's